Chapter 13. Click. "OK, Mum," said Amy, as she sat in her old chair, outside Rahul's dad's garage. "You remember that inspirational quote you like to tell me?" "Which one?" said Susie. "The one about don't dream dreams, make them come true." "Oh yes, I like that one." "Well," said Amy, "I, with Rahul's help, have kind of done that." Susie nodded. "OK, well done," but then frowned. "How do you mean?" Amy looked towards the garage and then back at her mum. "You promise you won't get upset?" she said. That's never a good thing when anyone says that." "Amy, how can I promise I won't get upset?" "Without knowing that what I'm about to see." "No, I get that, but I'd like you to say it anyway." "What, meaninglessly?" "Yes," said Amy. Susie sighed. "Right, I promise I won't get upset." Rahul, who was standing by the side of the garage with a new remote control, pressed the button. The door came up halfway towards Amy, Susie and Jack, then stopped. "Rahul, I thought you said you were going to get a grown-up to fix the garage door," said Amy. "I was, but Dad wasn't bothered." "I wasn't bothered," shouted Sanjay from somewhere in the warehouse. He said, "As long as it opens eventually, what's the rush?" "What's the rush?" Sanjay shouted again. "So you made that remote control," said Amy. "I did," said Rahul. Pressing the button again, the door shook, but didn't move. I'm started to worry about your inventing capabilities." "Not as much as I am." They looked round. It was Susie who had shouted. It was definitely her, even though they could only see her bottom half under the garage door, which she'd crept under while they were talking. "I think your mum might have found the Taylor Turbochaser," said Rahul. "Yes," said Amy. "I think she might." "Ha ha 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 ha." "I think your brother might have found it too." Amy wheeled herself under the door, followed by Rahul. When they were both inside the garage, they waited for about a minute for Susie to turn around. Susie, though, was just staring and staring at what had become of Amy's new wheelchair. It seemed for so long that Amy began to hope that perhaps her mum had started to like it. Eventually Amy said, hopefully, "It's called the Turbochaser ZX115. This finally made Susie turn around. Her face was looking very pale. There was a long pause. "What are you thinking of, Amy? What have you done? What even is it now? It doesn't even look like a wheelchair. It just looks mad. What am I going to tell your father?" "Oh my Lord, Amy, you are the end of the world." "Mum," said Amy, realising that to her mum hadn't started to like it. "She promised you wouldn't get upset." "Meaninglessly." "It's great, Mum. It really goes fast." "It does, Mrs. Taylor," said Rahul. "It's like a wheelchair supercar." "Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Rahul. Really, not only have you made Amy's new wheelchair look like a mad thing from Mario Kart," said Jack, very seriously. The only thing he didn't joke about was video games. "Mario Kart," said Rahul. "I think it's much more like something from Grand Theft Auto." "Mario Kart," said Jack firmly. "Be glad I didn't say Yoshi." "I think there is a bit of an element of Mater, the truck from Cars," said Sanjay, who had bent himself under the door to see what all these people were doing in his garage. "That's what I think Mum's van looks like," said Amy. "Anyway, that is actually a video game as well as a movie," said Jack. "Hello," said Susie. "Can we stop talking about what video game car it looks like?" "Well, You were the one trying to think of something, said Amy. Yes, because there's never been any wheelchair that's ever looked like that. But now, you tell me, goes really fast as well, so you're going to kill yourself in a cross between a dump truck, a sofa and an aquarium. Everyone looked at the Taylor Turbochaser. Good shout, said Sanjay. That pretty much sums it up. It's my dream, Mum, said Amy, her voice wobbling ever so slightly. I'm trying to make it come true. Susie looked at her. Her face and voice softened. Oh, Amy, I understand that, but... Click. What was that? Said Amy. They all turned around. Jack was standing a little way away, having clearly just taken a photo of the vehicle with his phone, which he was holding out. Then he looked down at his screen and started tapping. Jack, said Amy, don't put it on Instagram. I'm not, said Jack. Oh, okay. I've put it on Snapchat stories. Oh, no, said Amy. What's the problem? Dad checks your Snapchat, she screamed. He does, said Jack. Chapter 14. Quite a Peel. The next day at break, Rahul and Janet couldn't find Amy anywhere at school. This was odd, as she had definitely been in class for the register. Has she gone home, maybe? Said Janet to Rahul. They were walking together down one of the school corridors, looking around. I don't think so. Her mum would have come to get her, and she works quite a long way away, I think. Then suddenly they heard a noise, small but unmistakable, a sob. They looked around and saw that they were passing the school's one disabled toilet. Rahul and Janet exchanged glances. Amy, said Rahul nervously, are you in there? Yes, came a quiet voice back. What's it like? Said Janet. There was a pause. Rahul looked at her and frowned. Pardon? Said Amy. Well, said Janet, you know that the standard toilets in this place are terrible. I just wondered if yours was maybe a bit nicer. I know it's definitely bigger than any of ours. Oh my God, Janet, said Rahul. Can't you hear she's crying? Yes, Janet, said Amy. It's like Buckingham Palace in here. I've got my own TV and personal butler. Really? Said Janet. No, said Amy, opening the door, but thanks. I was crying, and now you've made me laugh. They went into the playground where some boys, Barry Bennett and Malcolm Bailey, and Alfie Moore and Sam Green and Ryan Ward, were playing football. They were making a lot of noise, which meant that Amy and Janet and Rahul could talk about why Amy had been crying without anyone noticing. What happened, Amy? Said Rahul. Is it something to do with yesterday? Yes, said Amy. And the Taylor Turbochaser? She nodded, but said, I'm not allowed to call it that anymore. Janet frowned. Why? Because after we got home, my dad FaceTimed. He had seen the photo on Jack's Snapchat. Oh, said Rahul. Was he cross? Amy went quiet. He doesn't really shout or anything, my dad. He just goes very cold. Do his lips go blue? Said Janet. No, Janet. I don't mean his temperature goes down. I mean he starts speaking very quietly and definitively and slowly. Her lip trembled as she said this. She took a deep breath. Anyway, he was speaking like that, and he said he was very disappointed in me, and that the new wheelchair cost a lot of money, and that we had to take off all the things that you put on it, Rahul, and turn it back into an ordinary chair. Did you tell him how amazing it is? I thought he loved cars too. I tried, but he wouldn't listen. He didn't want to hear about how fast it can go, or how well it can corner, or anything. He just said that what we had done to it was silly and idiotic and dangerous and probably illegal. He said he wanted to see a picture of the wheelchair with all the extras taken off by Sunday. Sunday, cried Raoul. That's in 3 days. Yes, he's going away then to Japan for the start of the Formula One season. He wants it done before that, or else he's going to send Mobilecon to pick it up. Raoul went very quiet. Even Janet seemed to understand that this was bad. But what wheelchair will you use then? Said Raoul, looking down. My old one, I suppose. But one wheel doesn't work. Well, I suppose he thinks it won't come to that we'll just convert the Turbochaser back to being a wheelchair, which, she shrugged her shoulders, I suppose we will. He's probably right anyway. It probably is illegal and dangerous and... Your dad's quite a pill, isn't he? Interrupted Janet. Pardon? It's something my mum says. It doesn't mean that he's a small thing like medicine that you have to swallow. Well, yes, I guess that. It means he's hard work, like pills can be. Yes, well, said Amy, he didn't used to be. He was really nice, once. But then after my accident, I don't know, that's when he got more cold. Is that when he left, said Janet, who tended to put things bluntly. Said Amy, yes. Raoul looked up. I'm so sorry, Amy, it's all my fault. I should never have pimped it. I'm not allowed to use that phrase either. Oh, but it isn't your fault. I wanted to do that. I don't want something that crawls along. I want something that flies. What, in the air, said Janet. I don't know if I can do that, said Raoul. No, I mean, along the road. I dreamt of it being, well, like it is. She lowered her voice to a whisper. The Taylor Turbochaser. Raoul nodded and sighed. I suppose there's nothing we can do. I'll start taking it apart tonight. Yes, said Amy. The bell rang for the end of break. Amy started turning her wheelchair around and then around again and then again. Suddenly, a stern but kind voice rang out over the playground. Amy Taylor, are you intending to join us for the rest of the day? Amy turned to see Mr. Carter, the head teacher, standing by the door holding it open. Raoul, she said, can you, push me back to class, please? Raoul started pushing. Any time today, called Mr. Carter. Janet grabbed the other handle of the wheelchair and, together, she and Raoul started running. Someone had left a football on the ground. Amy steered around it. They swerved left, past an abandoned jumper, then slalomed round a rucksack. A new kid looking lost in a cone that had been left out from a PE lesson, which was all quite difficult with a dodgy wheel. But, powered by Raoul and Janet, at least she managed it. They screeched through the door and into the corridor. Well done, said Mr. Carter as they slowed down, and he shut the door. You'll be a racing driver one day, Amy. Amy looked at him. No, she said sadly, not now I won't. Amy and Raoul like racing video games. Can you do me a poster of your favourite video game, please?